The moment I received the divorce certificate, I calmly looked at my ex-husband. Congratulations, you finally don't have to run back and forth between two homes. He frowned and asked, "You don't want your son?" I sneered. I never wanted to be his mother. As I turned to leave, I pulled out the paternity test report I had hidden for 3 years. The child wasn't mine at all. 5 years ago, on the day I had a miscarriage, his white moonlight just happened to give birth to a son. They worked together to trick me into believing it was my child. While I was in the ICU fighting for my life, he was accompanying his white moonlight through her postpartum confinement. When I suffered from postpartum depression and cried uncontrollably, he said I was being dramatic and told me to bear with it for the sake of the child. For the past 5 years, I've been like a free nanny, raising their son. And he, under the guise of seeing his son, brazenly maintained 2 families. I knew it all along. I was just waiting for the right moment. Now, it's time for them to pay the price. Outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, the sweltering air of late summer clung to the skin, making it hard to breathe. I held the dark red divorce certificate in my hand, brand new, the edges even a little sharp. Zhou Jingshan stood opposite me, his handsome face full of complex emotions, like heartache, and like relief. "Lin Xiao," he started, his voice with a trace of the familiar, feigned hoarseness, "are you really heartless enough to abandon our daughter? She's still so young." I glanced at him, remembering the daughter who was instigated by his mother to force me to help their entire family, otherwise she wouldn't do her homework, and my heart turned cold. "The child was spoiled by your mother, now she's yours, you can all be reunited." I said casually, "As for the house, it's my premarital property, you must move out today." He probably didn't expect me to be so decisive, and his face instantly turned ugly. "Are you crazy?" He raised his voice. "You're giving up your family for this little thing?" I couldn't be bothered to argue with him about our daughter anymore. She was just the last straw that broke the camel's back, but not the heaviest one. I calmly wished him, "Congratulations, Zhou Jingshan, you finally don't have to run back and forth between two homes." These words were like an invisible needle, precisely piercing him. His eyes flickered, and his brow furrowed tightly, as if weighing something. He actually asked me, "Then you don't want your son?" His tone was full of righteous accusation, as if I were a sinful woman abandoning her husband and child. I finally couldn't help but sneer. The laughter sounded particularly harsh in the stifling air. "Zhou Jingshan, I never wanted to be his mother." His face changed drastically, from the feigned heartache just now to genuine shock and panic. I didn't give him time to react, took a folded document from my bag, and shoved it directly into his hand. It was a paternity test report. He looked down, and when he saw the line at the bottom of the report that concluded exclusion of biological relationship, he froze. The divorce certificate in his hand fell to the ground with a thud. His hands began to tremble uncontrollably, his lips quivered, and his face was as pale as a sheet. "Lin Xiao. You. When did you?" His voice changed, becoming hoarse and unrecognizable. I had no interest in admiring his current ugly state, and turned to leave. The wind carried my words lightly into his ears. "I've known for 3 years." Behind me, his back was stiff, as if struck by lightning. My thoughts, however, uncontrollably drifted back to 5 years ago. At that time, I was 7 months pregnant, filled with endless anticipation for the future. That afternoon, I was on duty at the hospital when a sharp pain suddenly shot through my abdomen, followed by a gush of warm liquid. I collapsed in a pool of blood, desperately pressing my phone and dialing Zhou Jingshan's number before losing consciousness. All that came from the receiver was the cold message that the phone was switched off. I pressed the call button outside the operating room almost to the point of breaking it, but the person I needed most never appeared. I lost my child, a fully formed, vibrant life. When I woke up from the anesthesia, I was lying in a cold hospital bed, and the whole world was gray. Zhou Jingshan finally rushed in, reeking of alcohol and with bloodshot eyes. He said he was entertaining clients in another city, for a very important project, and his phone had died. His eyes darted around, avoiding my gaze. I was so overwhelmed by grief at the time that I chose to believe him. I believed it was just bad luck, that he was just too busy with work. I even made excuses for him, thinking he must be heartbroken too. A month later, just as I was still crying myself to sleep every night over the loss of my child, he suddenly brought home a baby. The baby was tiny and wrinkled, lying in swaddling clothes. He said to me with a smile in his eyes, "Xiao Xiao, look, this is our son." I was completely stunned, looking at him in confusion. My child. Wasn't I unable to keep him? He gently stroked my head, explaining in a firm tone, "The doctor said the baby was premature and in critical condition, so he was sent straight to the incubator. I didn't want to worry you, so I didn't tell you. Now the baby's condition is stable, so I brought him back." I looked at the tiny baby and then at Zhou Jingshan's face, full of love, and I believed it. I really believed it. I thought it was heaven's compensation for me, a treasure I had regained after losing a child. Looking back now, I was laughably stupid. A surgeon, being deceived by such a lie full of loopholes. Perhaps it wasn't that I was stupid, but because I loved him, I was willing to believe everything he wove. And he, taking advantage of my love, launched a well-planned scam, lasting 5 years, with peace of mind. Returning to that empty home, I no longer had to endure the noise of my mother-in-law's family, nor face Zhou Jingshan's hypocritical face. The air finally smelled only of myself. I went into the study and dragged a heavy box from the innermost cabinet. The box wasn't locked, but inside lay all the forbearance and humiliation I had endured for the past 3 years. I opened it, and inside were neatly stacked documents, photos, and a voice recorder. The subtle clues from the past 5 years replayed in my mind like a movie. The first year, the child was a little over 1 year old and was hospitalized for pneumonia, needing a blood test. When I received the lab report, my eyes fell on the blood type column, AB. My blood almost froze at that moment. I am blood type O, and Zhou Jingshan is also blood type O. How could 2 people with blood type O have a child with blood type AB? This is basic biology. I grabbed the lab report and rushed into the doctor's office, my voice trembling. "Doctor, is there a mistake? This blood type is wrong." The doctor on duty was a young man. He glanced at it, then at me, and pushed up his glasses, saying, "Theoretically, it's impossible, but there are extremely rare exceptions, such as the Bombay blood type. I suggest you and your husband both get a detailed examination." Before I could speak, Zhou Jingshan, who had followed me, immediately chimed in, yes, it must be some rare blood type." "Lin Xiao, don't make a fuss, how can you doubt your own son?" His tone was clearly reproachful, but his eyes darted around. I was left speechless. Yes, how could I doubt the son that I had given birth to at the cost of half my life? I must be overthinking it. In the second year, Zhou Jingshan started becoming increasingly busy. As a partner in an architectural design firm, being busy was normal. But his busy meant not coming home at least 3 or 4 days a week. Every time I asked, he used the same excuse, "I have to work overtime, there's a big project I'm working on." Once, I made soup, thinking about how hard he was working, and specifically delivered it to his company. The young girl at the company's front desk recognized me, and she looked at me with surprise. "Director Zhou didn't come to work today, he took the day off." My heart sank to the bottom at that moment. I stood in the bustling office building lobby, holding the insulated container, looking like a fool. When I got home, I called and questioned him. Him on the other end of the phone didn't show any remorse, but instead flew into a rage. "Lin Xiao. What do you mean? Are you stalking me? If you don't trust me, let's get a divorce." The word divorce was like a knife, stabbing deeply into my heart. I looked at my son crawling around in the living room, who was giggling at me. I backed down. For the sake of the child, for the sake of this seemingly complete family, I chose to endure. I told myself that men prioritize their careers, and perhaps he had some unspeakable secret. I began to learn to be an understanding wife, no longer questioning his whereabouts or checking his phone. The turning point happened in the 3rd year. The child suddenly developed a high fever in the middle of the night and had a seizure. I was terrified and rushed him to the hospital where I worked overnight. We checked into the emergency room and completed the admission procedures. At the pediatric nurse station, I needed to retrieve the child's previous records. The nurse pulled up the electronic records, and I leaned in to check the information. When my eyes landed on the mother column, I froze. The name written there wasn't mine, Lin Xiao. But a strange, yet incredibly familiar name, Bai Ranran. Bai Ranran, Zhou Jingshan's first love, his white moonlight. The pure and delicate girl who had been by his side since college, cherished in his palm. I felt a dizzy spell, my legs went weak, and I almost fell to the ground. I gripped the nurse station's counter tightly, my nails nearly digging into the wood. The nurse looked at me strangely. Dr. Lin, are you okay? You look so pale. I forced myself to stand, shaking my head with a dry voice. I'm fine, maybe I was just too rushed. I used all my strength to complete all the admission procedures. On the way home, I was like a walking corpse. So, the blood type was correct. I was the one who was wrong. I had been raising someone else's son for 3 years. Raising my husband's and his white moonlight's illegitimate child. When I got home, I didn't cry or make a scene. I was frighteningly calm. I secretly plucked a strand of hair from the child and found one from Zhou Jingshan's pillow. I sent them together for an expedited paternity test. 3 days later, I received the results. Black and white, clear as day. The child has no blood relation to me. There is a parental relationship with Zhou Jingshan. At that moment, I didn't collapse or despair. I was left with a calmness that was cold to the extreme. I didn't expose them on the spot. Because I knew that merely exposing them would be too easy on them. I began to investigate in secret. I hired a private investigator and retrieved the surveillance footage and admission records from all the hospitals in the city on the day I gave birth 5 years ago. The truth was more cruel than I imagined. 5 years ago, I was struggling for my life in the operating room of Hospital A due to a severe hemorrhage. And Zhou Jingshan, on the same day and at the same time, appeared in the obstetrics department of Hospital B. He signed his name on Bai Ranran's cesarean consent form. His identity was, husband. My husband, while I was miscarrying for him, was with his white moonlight, welcoming the birth of their child. I watched the surveillance video, his anxious waiting outside the delivery room, the uncontrollable joy on his face when he saw the child being carried out. Then I thought of him rushing to my bedside, reeking of alcohol and avoiding eye contact. It wasn't the smell of alcohol, but the disinfectant from another hospital. It wasn't avoidance, but guilt and shame. This deception was flawlessly designed from the very beginning. And I was the most pathetic pawn. The truth was like a poisoned blade, completely dissecting my false dream, revealing the rotten, rancid core within. I didn't make a sound, but began my counterattack. I needed evidence, more evidence that could damn them all. I started following Zhou Jingshan. On those 3 days a week when he worked late, he drove in the same direction, to Jiangpanhuading in the south of the city. It was a high-end residential complex, where the apartments cost 5 times as much as my old, run-down place. I found an opportunity to sneak in. Late at night, like a ghost, I stood in the shadows of the building across from his. I watched him expertly park his car, take out his keys, and open the door to an apartment on the 18th floor. The lights came on. A slender figure in silk pajamas came out to greet him, gently taking his briefcase and helping him off with his coat. It was Bai Ranran. I saw it clearly. Then, a small figure ran out of the living room and jumped into Zhou Jingshan's arms, calling out in a childish voice, "Daddy, you're back." Zhou Jingshan lifted him high in the air, a genuine smile on his face, the likes of which I had never seen before. Bai Ranran snuggled beside him, a family of 3, happy and harmonious, a picture of warmth. And I, standing in this darkness, was like a ridiculous thief, peeking at the husband who should have been mine, and the other family I had built with my money. I looked down at myself. The curtains in my apartment were the ones we bought 10 years ago when we got married, so washed out they were almost colorless. I worked shifts non-stop at the hospital, surgery after surgery, so busy I didn't even have time to eat. Working more than 12 hours was commonplace. But my salary card was always inexplicably short of money. I started checking the accounts. I printed out the transaction history for all the bank cards under my name, one by one. I didn't know until I checked, and when I did, I was shocked. Over the past 5 years, Zhou Jingshan had transferred nearly 2 million yuan from my cards under various guises. For every transfer, he had a plausible reason. Xiao, we're still 30,000 short for the down payment on that new apartment we looked at. Can you transfer it to me first? Xiao, I have a friend who's working on a project that's guaranteed to make money. Let's invest 50,000 and save up an education fund for our son. Xiao, the house needs to be redecorated. Can you take out 20,000 first? In reality, not a single cent of that money was used on our home. It all flowed into the same account, by Ranran's account. The down payment on that Jiangpan Huading apartment she lived in came from my money. The white Porsche Macan she drove was also bought with my card. I was working the night shift at the hospital, nibbling on cold bread until dawn, while she was posting delicate photos on social media of herself after a spa treatment. Because I was busy with work, I barely saw my son a few times a week, while she could be with him every day, enjoying the joys of family. Even more ridiculous is how Zhou Jingshan portrayed me in front of his parents and friends, as a career-minded, neglectful woman. He said I was cold, that I didn't understand life, that all I cared about was work. But what was the reality? He needed me to work my tail off to support his expensive love and illegitimate child. I was the ultimate tool, exploited to the core. The most ironic thing was by Ranran's WeChat moments. She never showed Zhou Jingshan's full face, but she implied her blissful life in every post. One day, she posted a huge bouquet of roses with the caption, "Thank you, Mr. So-and-so, for filling my days with surprises." The next day, she showed off a new Hermes bag with the caption, "It feels so good to be spoiled, thank you for your unwavering support." The comments were full of praise for her as an independent and strong single mother, living the life every woman envies, and a woman who doesn't care about a man's money is the luckiest. Looking at those comments made my stomach churn. Independent and strong? Every penny she spent was stained with my blood and sweat. Doesn't care about a man's money? She simply treated me like an ATM. I carefully organized all the transfer records, receipts, and screenshots of her WeChat moments, and put them into that evidence box. The box was getting fuller, and my heart, colder. Looking at my sallow face and thin frame in the mirror, the result of long hours and mental stress, I felt a sense of detachment. Was this still the proud and bright Lin Xiao? No. That Lin Xiao died on the operating table 5 years ago. What's alive now is just a shell, existing only for revenge. During those 2 years after knowing the truth, I lived like a double agent. In front of Zhou Jingshan, I behaved even more obediently and sensibly. When he said he had to work overtime, I smiled and told him to take care of himself. When he needed money for investment, I transferred it to him without a second thought. When he occasionally came home and showed concern for me, I cooperated by acting touched. He probably thought he had completely tamed me, turning me into a mindless puppet who only knew how to give. So, he started to get more and more outrageous, constantly testing my limits. He handed me a resume and asked me to arrange a cushy job at the hospital for Ranran's cousin. He asked me to help take care of his son on weekends because he needed to take an important client to a hot spring resort in the neighboring city. From the photos taken by the private investigator, I saw that the important client was Ranran. The most outrageous thing was when he was a little drunk, put his arm around my shoulder, and said in a negotiating tone, "Xiao, you see, you're so busy with work, and it's hard for you to raise the child alone." Ranran. Oh no, my distant cousin, it's not easy for her to raise her child alone either, so why don't we let her move in with us? That way, she can help you a little. As he said this, his eyes gleamed with calculation and triumph. He probably thought I was stupid enough to accept his and Iran's duet of a ménage à trois. I was cutting fruit when the knife in my hand paused. I raised my head, looked at his hypocritical face, and actually laughed. Okay, I said. The smugness in his eyes was almost overflowing. He thought I had finally seen the light and was willing to make the ultimate compromise for the sake of this family. Little did he know that beneath my docile facade was a carefully laid trap. I hadn't been idle these past 2 years. I contacted my best college friend, who is also the best divorce lawyer in the city, Sumuyun. Under her guidance, I began to transfer assets discreetly. My salary and bonuses were no longer deposited into the old account, but were transferred in batches to Sumuyun for safekeeping. I secretly sold the 2 small apartments I had bought as investments before marriage, and all the proceeds were transferred away. I collected all the evidence of Zhou Jingshan's extramarital affair and transfer of joint marital property. 3 years of tracking records, countless transfer statements, his and Bai Ranran's disgusting chat logs, and intimate photos of their family of 3 traveling, filled an entire 1 terabyte mobile hard drive. I also used all my connections to find out Bai Ranran's biggest secret: she wasn't even divorced. Her legal husband is named David, a Chinese American who works abroad year-round. She spent my money while being lovey-dovey with Zhou Jingshan, and at the same time maintained a transnational marriage with David. She was the real master of time management, wanting to have her cake and eat it too. Everything was ready. I chose a day when he was in the best mood, the day he had just signed a big deal and was in high spirits. I calmly said 2 words to him: divorce. The smile on his face froze, and beneath the surprise was an unconcealed ecstasy. He probably thought that I finally couldn't stand this abnormal life anymore, and took the initiative to quit, fulfilling him and his white moonlight. That way, he could be openly with Bai Ranran, get rid of me, this burden, and not be saddled with the reputation of abandoning his wife. He even pretended to try to dissuade me with a few words: "Xiao Xiao, is there something I'm not doing well enough? We can talk." I shook my head: "No need, I'm tired." He immediately seized the opportunity and pretended to be in pain. "Okay, I respect your decision." The divorce procedures that followed went surprisingly smoothly. He couldn't wait to sign the divorce agreement, afraid that I would go back on my word. The division of property was simple, because we had almost no joint property under our names. The house was my premarital property, the car was under his name, and the savings had long been transferred away by me. He thought I was ignorant and leaving with nothing. It wasn't until we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau that he belatedly remembered something and asked about the child. Then, the opening scene happened. I pulled out the paternity test that he thought would never exist. His face was as pale as a ghost, and he looked at me in despair. "When did you find out?" I looked at him coldly, as if I were looking at a stranger. 3 years ago. Zhou Jingshan, the alimony and emotional distress compensation for these 3 years, and every penny you took from me, you all have to pay it back, without missing a single cent. I slammed the lawyer's letter that Sumuyun had prepared long ago onto the hood of the car in front of him. "See you in court." On the lawyer's letter, the compensation amount was clearly written: 5 million. He looked at the number, his body swayed, and he almost couldn't stand. I turned around and left resolutely, without looking back at him. 3 years of forbearance were for this moment of pleasure. Zhou Jingshan, Bai Ranran, your good show should come to an end. And my revenge has just begun. Zhou Jingshan almost scrambled out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. He grabbed my wrist, his strength was astonishing, but his palms were full of cold sweat. "Lin Xiao. Let's talk. Things aren't what you think," he pleaded anxiously, with a hint of barely noticeable panic in his voice. I shook off his hand with force, looking at him with cold eyes. "What else could it be? You and your white moonlight have been putting on a show of deep affection in front of me for 5 years, isn't that enough?" His face turned red and white, trying to explain. Back then it was an accident, Ran she. I was also forced. Forced? I interrupted him, finding these 4 words ridiculously laughable. "So you were forced to use my money to support your mistress and illegitimate child? Forced to accompany her during her childbirth when I had a miscarriage? Forced to raise someone else's son for 5 years while lying to me?" Each of my questions was like a slap in the face, hitting him hard. He was speechless, stammering for a long time, unable to say a complete sentence. Seeing that the explanation was not working, he immediately changed his strategy and began to play the emotional card. His eyes turned red, and his voice became choked with emotion. Xiao, I know I was wrong, I'm a jerk. Give me another chance, okay? Let's start over. Chance? I sneered. Zhou Jingshan, I gave you 5 years. A whole 5 years, you treated me like a fool and played me around, and now you're talking to me about a chance? His patience seemed to have run out. Seeing that being soft didn't work, his face darkened, revealing his threatening nature. What good will it do you to sue me? It's not good for anyone to make things bigger. Don't forget, you are also a public figure, a famous surgeon. I looked at him calmly, took out my phone from my pocket, and pressed the play button. A clear recording came from the phone. It was the voices of Zhou Jingshan and Bai Ranran. Jingshan, Lin Xiao, she won't find out, will she? I feel so uneasy. This was Bai Ranran's weak voice. Don't worry, her mind is only on that son right now, she won't suspect a thing. Besides, she loves me so much, she'll believe anything I say. Just relax and spend the money. In a couple of years, I'll find an opportunity to tell her I want a divorce, and then we can be together openly. This was Zhou Jingshan's smug voice. The recording continued, the content was vile and unbearable. They discussed how to better deceive Lin Xiao, how to use my money to buy an investment property, and even mocked me for being a boring workaholic. Zhou Jingshan's face, as the recording played, turned from livid to ashen. He knew I had the decisive evidence, and he had no room for excuses left. That evening, I received a call from Bai Ranran. Her voice was still as weak and innocent as ever, with a sob. Sister Lin Xiao, I know I'm sorry. Please, let Jingshan go, and let me go too. I'm a victim too. I almost laughed out loud in anger. A victim? Miss Bai, this victim of yours, living in a mansion bought with my money, driving a luxury car bought with my money, how does it feel? Silence on the other end of the phone. After a long while, she started to turn the tables. Jingshan told me back then that your relationship was over and you would be divorcing soon, that's why I got together with him. I was also deceived by him. I slowly retorted, oh? Really? Then how come our marriage certificate was still fresh on the day the child was born? Miss Bai, is that what you call deceived? She was speechless again. Finally, she began to cry hysterically. What did I do wrong? I just fell in love with a man. I bore him a child. Why can't you just grant us our wish? I couldn't be bothered to waste any more words with her and hung up directly. Immediately, I blacklisted Zhou Jingshan and Bai Ranran's phone numbers and WeChat accounts. The world was peaceful. Not long after, my lawyer best friend, Su Muyun, sent me several screenshots. It was Zhou Jingshan and Bai Ranran's chat history. I don't know where she got it from. The two had completely torn off their masks and started frantically accusing each other, like dogs fighting over a bone. Bai Ranran, Zhou Jingshan. You liar. Didn't you say she didn't know anything? Now look, she's going to sue us. My reputation is ruined because of you. Zhou Jingshan, Bai Ranran, stop playing innocent here. If you hadn't insisted on having the child, insisting that I use the child to tie down Lin Xiao, would things be like this today? It was all your idea. Bai Ranran, I forced you. It was clearly you who couldn't bear to part with Lin Xiao, the money tree. It was you who wanted to have it both ways. Zhou Jingshan, what's the point of saying all this now? Hurry up and think of a way to pay back the money. 5 million. Where am I supposed to get it from? Looking at their ugly faces as they shirked responsibility, my heart was unmoved. This was just an appetizer. The real show is yet to come. A few days later, my life was completely disrupted. My phone was like it had a virus, ringing non-stop 24 hours a day, with harassing calls and abusive texts from unknown numbers. The hospital leaders also talked to me, with serious expressions, saying that a lot of negative news about me had appeared online, which had a very bad impact on the hospital's reputation. I opened Weibo and realized that I was already famous. An account called Abandoned Ranran posted a tearful and heart-wrenching long article. The title was, "A Mother's Bloody Accusation, the 5 years my child and I were abandoned." Without even thinking, I knew this was by Ranran's doing. In the article, she portrayed herself as a pitiful mother who had endured humiliation for love and was forced to separate from her own flesh and blood. She said that Zhou Jingshan had wanted to divorce me for a long time, but I stubbornly refused and used all kinds of means to prevent it. She said that I occupied her husband and child, and for 5 years I did not let her see the child once. She also vividly described how I abused the child, often locking him alone at home because I was busy with work and not giving him food. Now, this vicious stepmother is going to heartlessly abandon this innocent child after squeezing out the value of her husband, taking away his last resort. It was written with such sincerity and earnestness that it made the readers sad and the viewers weep. The comments section has been completely occupied, with curses everywhere. Oh my God, how can there be such a vicious woman? Not even sparing the child. This kind of stepmother should go to hell. Just because she can't have her own, she abuses other people's children? And she's a doctor, where's her medical ethics? I suggest doxing her, let her suffer social death. My heart aches for that mother and child, so pitiful. Soon, my photos, workplace, and home address were all doxed and exposed online. Some righteous people who didn't know the truth began to gather at the hospital entrance, holding signs and shouting, "Fire the unscrupulous Dr. Lin Xiao and return the child to the mother." The words executioner were splashed in red paint on my office door. The head of the department, under immense pressure, suggested that I temporarily suspend my work and go home to avoid the storm. I refused. As usual, I put on my white coat, calmly did my rounds, calmly wrote medical records, and calmly performed surgeries. I ignored those strange looks and the gossiping behind my back. My best friend, Su Muyun, was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan, roaring at me on the phone, "Lin Xiao. Are you crazy? It's such a mess outside, how can you be so calm? You should quickly clarify." I looked in the mirror, adjusted my collar, and smiled. Don't worry, the bullet has to fly for a while. I have an even more ruthless move waiting for her. After hanging up the phone, I logged into my long-unused Weibo account. I didn't offer lengthy explanations, nor did I cry and beg for sympathy. I only posted one Weibo post, with just 8 words, "The truth will be revealed soon, stay tuned." The accompanying image was a black picture with a countdown in white numbers, 72 hours. By Ranran, you think public opinion is your weapon? Soon you will know that it can also become the iron nail that pins you to the pillar of shame. 72 hours is not a long time for people caught up in online frenzy. But for Bai Ranran and Zhou Jingshan, it was a time of extreme torment. During these 3 days, the online abuse reached its peak. Bai Ranran seized the opportunity to start a live broadcast, crying her heart out in front of the camera, telling the bitterness of her 5 years, attracting countless sympathy and rewards. She had become a fighter against the vicious ex-wife, a great mother. And I became the public enemy of the entire internet. Finally, the countdown reached 0. Amidst the urging and scolding of countless netizens, I released my second long Weibo post. The title was, "Regarding the Vicious Stepmother, I Have Something to Say." No sensational words, no unnecessary nonsense, only one piece of cold and conclusive evidence after another. Part 1, The Truth. 5 years ago, I uploaded the surveillance videos and admission records from Hospital A and Hospital B from 5 years ago. The video was edited and split-screened. On the left was the scene of me being wheeled into the operating room for emergency treatment, time, 2:15 p.m. On the right was the scene of Zhou Jingshan anxiously waiting at the entrance of the delivery room at Hospital B, time, 2:30 p.m. On the left, my abortion surgery record, showing the procedure lasted 3 hours. On the right, by Ranran's cesarean section consent form, with Zhou Jingshan's flamboyant signature in the husband column. The evidence is irrefutable. While I was on the verge of death, he was with his mistress, having her baby. Part 2, My Son, I directly threw out the paternity test report that I had hidden for 3 years. And another one, which I had done later, a paternity test report for Zhou Jingshan, by Ranran, and the child. The conclusion is clear and unambiguous: the child has no blood relation to me, Lin Xiao. The child is the biological son of Zhou Jingshan and by Ranran. Part 3. Who is supporting whom? I made a table of every sum of money Zhou Jingshan had transferred from my account over the past 5 years, totaling 197 million yuan, and made it public. I marked the destination of each sum of money with a red line, by Ranran's personal account. I also attached the purchase contract for by Ranran's Riverside Splendor apartment, proof of the down payment, and the purchase invoice for that Porsche. The payer was all me. Part 4. The birth of an actor. I released the recording of Zhou Jingshan and by Ranran discussing how to deceive me, how to spend my money, and how to act in front of me, as well as countless sweet, explicit chat records and screenshots of them discussing countermeasures over the years. Darling, that fool Lin Xiao sent money again. Let's go buy that bag we saw last time, shall we? Baby, I'm sorry you have to put up with this. Just bear with it a little longer. Once I get my hands on those 2 houses she owned before we got married, I'll divorce her. Part 5. The final Easter egg. I revealed by Ranran's true marital status. Attached was her marriage certificate photo, blurred, with her legal husband, David Lin, as well as David's work certificate from the United States. She was never divorced at all. She is a woman who had an affair during her marriage and bore a child with another man. This long Weibo post was like a bombshell, detonating a monstrous wave on the calm lake surface. The comments section, which had been scolding me just a second ago, instantly fell into a deathly silence. A few minutes later, comments and reposts began to explode exponentially. Holy crap! A shocking reversal. My jaw just dropped. This is the real victim. Scammed out of money and feelings and even raised someone else's illegitimate child for 5 years. What a human tragedy. That by Ranran is too disgusting. Having an affair during marriage and being a mistress, spending the original wife's money and then turning around and acting like a white lotus? She's a textbook level green TB *TCH. Scumbag and green TB *TCH, locked up for good. Don't let them out to harm others. My heart aches for Dr. Lin. How did she get through these 5 years? So strong. The wind direction reversed in an instant. By Ranran's Weibo was completely overrun by angry netizens, and over 1 million abusive curses flooded under her previous pitifully selling long post. She was probably scared silly, deleted all her Weibo posts, and cancelled her account. But it was too late. All the screenshots had spread across the entire internet like a virus. She was socially dead. 2 days later, a blonde, blue-eyed foreign man, accompanied by 2 black bodyguards, aggressively showed up at Riverside residences. It was her legal husband, David. He had clearly seen everything online and made a special trip back from the United States. Neighbors said that day, the 18th floor was filled with intense arguments, a woman's cries, and the sound of things breaking. Finally, David called the police in front of everyone. He was going to accuse by Ranran of bigamy and transferring marital property. By Ranran's good days were over. The storm of public opinion quickly swept over Zhou Jingshan. The architectural design company he worked for was one that highly valued its reputation. The scandal of a partner having an affair and conspiring with his mistress to deceive his wife caused the company's stock price to plummet. Several major clients who were in negotiations terminated their cooperation, citing moral risks on the part of the partner, which would affect the company's image. The other partners in the company urgently convened a board meeting and unanimously decided to demand that Zhou Jingshan withdraw his shares and get out of the company. Overnight, Zhou Jingshan went from being a high-spirited design director to an unemployed outcast. His parents, 2 elderly people who had always been proud of their son, rushed over from their hometown. When Su Muyun presented all the evidence to them, the 2 elders trembled with anger. His mother, the old lady who used to always nitpick at me, held my hand with tears streaming down her face. Lin Xiao, the Zhou family is sorry for what happened to you. We failed to educate our son and raised such a beast. His father, a man of few words, transferred all of Zhou Jingshan's remaining shares in the company to my name the next day, saying it was compensation for me. Zhou Jingshan watched all of this happen, his face ashen, powerless to resist. He had lost everything. Career, reputation, family. Bai Ranran, on the other hand, was in a complete mess. David hired the best legal team, determined to make her pay the most painful price. The evidence of bigamy was conclusive, and she was facing imprisonment. She finally knew fear and made a phone call to Zhou Jingshan from the detention center. As soon as the phone was connected, she hysterically cried and cursed inside, "Zhou Jingshan. It's all your fault. You coward. You swore you would marry me and divorce that woman Lin Xiao. And now? You've caused me to go to jail." Zhou Jingshan also broke down, roaring at her on the other end of the phone, "It's you. It's all you. If you hadn't insisted on having that child, if you hadn't been so greedy, how would I have ended up like this?" The two people who were once so close were now like two mad dogs, tearing each other apart. Before hanging up the phone, Bai Ranran issued her final threat, "If I don't have it good, you won't either. I have evidence against you too." She really anonymously sent Su Muyin the evidence of how Zhou Jingshan had been falsifying accounts and taking kickbacks in projects over the years. Zhou Jingshan's lawyer quickly found me, adopted a very humble attitude, saying he was willing to accept all the compensation conditions I proposed, only requesting an out-of-court settlement and for me to drop the lawsuit. I looked at the lawyer's businesslike face and sneered. "Settle? It's too late. What I wanted was never money. What I wanted was to ruin his reputation and leave him with nothing." One late night, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Zhou Jingshan. He was dead drunk, reeking of alcohol, his hair disheveled, his suit crumpled, nothing like the elite he used to be. He knelt at my door, crying and banging on it. "Xiao Xiao. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please forgive me. Let's remarry." Xiao Xiao, open the door. It's so cold outside. Through the cold security door, I calmly watched him throwing a tantrum outside. "Zhou Jingshan," I said, my voice not loud, but clear enough to carry, "do you remember 5 years ago?" His crying stopped for a moment. I was at the door of the operating room, in so much pain I was about to die, crying and screaming, calling you, "Where were you?" I lost my child, suffered from postpartum depression, couldn't sleep night after night, and when I broke down and cried, you said I was being dramatic and told me to endure it for the child's sake. Now, you're kneeling here, begging me to forgive you? Outside the door, his crying turned into wailing, full of despair and regret. I didn't say another word, turned and went back to the living room, and closed the door leading to the entrance hall, shutting out all his sounds. "Zhou Jingshan, your repentance is too late. You opened the gates of hell yourself." A month later, the child custody lawsuit went to court. Zhou Jingshan probably wanted to grab this last straw, and his lawyer argued fiercely in court, trying to prove that he was a good father who loved his child. The judge, following the procedure, asked for the child's opinion. That child I had raised for 5 years, Zhou Ziang, nicknamed Yang Yang, was already 5.5 years old. He was wearing a small suit and stood in the center of the courtroom, looking a little lost. The judge asked him gently, "Little friend, do you want to be with your daddy, or do you want to be with your mommy?" Everyone thought that he would choose his biological father, Zhou Jingshan, or his biological mother, Bai Ranran. But he raised his head and said in a childish but clear voice, "I want to be with Mama Lin." The whole place erupted in an uproar. Zhou Jingshan panicked and shouted at him, "Yang Yang. Look here. I'm your daddy." Yang Yang turned his head and looked at him, his eyes showing no closeness, only alienation and confusion. "But you never spend time with me. You always say you're busy with work, but actually, you go to be with Mama Lin." The child's innocent words stunned me instantly. He continued, "I know, I'm not Lin Mama's biological child. The kids in kindergarten laugh at me, saying I'm a wild child. But, Lin Mama is the best to me. When I had a high fever, she held me, stayed up all night, and used warm water to wipe my body. I wanted that expensive transformer, but Dad wouldn't buy it for me. Lin Mama secretly bought it for me. She never gets angry with me, and she holds my hand, teaches me to write, and tells me stories. The child's words silenced the entire courtroom. His voice wasn't loud, but every word struck the hearts of everyone present. And it struck my heart too. I thought that for these 5 years, I was just numbly fulfilling a mother's duty. I thought I didn't have much feeling for him. But it turns out that those late-night companionships, those unintentional tendernesses, those subconscious protections, were all remembered in the heart of this little child. Bai Ran, in the audience, was already sobbing uncontrollably. She shouted at the child, Yang Yang. Yang Yang, look at Mama. I'm your real Mama. The child looked at her, his eyes strange and timid, and shrank back. Who are you? I don't know you. Bai Ran completely broke down. For these 5 years, although she gave birth to this child, she never fulfilled her responsibility as a mother for even a single day. She treated him as a tool to tie down Zhou Jingshan and extract money from me. She enjoyed the title of mother, but pushed all the hard work and responsibilities of raising the child onto me, the fool. In the end, the judge ruled that custody of the child belonged to Zhou Jingshan's parents, and Zhou Jingshan and Bai Ran would pay child support every month. And I have the right to visit the child at any time. I didn't fight for custody. Because I knew that, legally, I had no standing. Moreover, taking the child away from his familiar grandparents might be another kind of harm to him. Walking out of the courtroom, Yang Yang broke free from his grandmother's hand, ran to me, and hugged my leg tightly. Lin Mama, will you still come to see me in the future? He asked, looking up with a hopeful expression in his eyes. I squatted down, touched his head, and my eyes grew hot. Of course. Lin Mama will always be your Lin Mama. He smiled happily. Not far away, Zhou Jingshan looked at this scene, his eyes complex, filled with emotions I couldn't explain. Perhaps it was jealousy, perhaps it was regret. But it had nothing to do with me anymore. Blood ties are sometimes not the most important thing. 5 years of sincere dedication was not misplaced after all. 3 months later, Bai Ran's bigamy case officially went to trial. Her husband, David, provided all the evidence of her marital infidelity over the past 5 years, including intimate photos of her and Zhou Jingshan, the child's birth certificate, and the paternity test that I provided. The chain of evidence was complete and irrefutable. The court announced the verdict on the spot. Bigamy was established, and she was sentenced to 1 year in prison. The moment the verdict was announced, Bai Ran collapsed in the defendant's seat and burst into tears. But all of this was in vain. A year later, she was released from prison. The world outside had long changed beyond recognition. David divorced her immediately after the verdict took effect and, through legal means, recovered all the marital property she had transferred. The luxury house and car that Zhou Jingshan had bought for her with my money were also ordered by the court to be returned to my name as compensation to me. She had nothing under her name. She went to Zhou Jingshan. At this time, Zhou Jingshan was no longer the glorious architectural designer he once was. After the company went bankrupt, he was heavily in debt and could only move back to his parents' old house in the suburbs, barely making ends meet by drawing blueprints and running errands for some small companies. Seeing Bai Ran, who was haggard and dressed in cheap clothes, Zhou Jingshan just sneered. How dare you come to me? If it weren't for you, you jinx, how could I have ended up like this? The two had a big fight and parted on bad terms. In despair, Bai Ran actually came to the hospital to find me. That day, as I was leaving the outpatient clinic, she rushed over and knelt down with a thump in the crowded lobby. Lin Xiao. Dr. Lin. I beg you, please help me. I have nothing now. She hugged my legs, crying uncontrollably. I looked at her coldly, at this woman who had once painstakingly destroyed my life. When you tried so hard to steal my husband, did you ever think about how I felt? When you used your son to deceive me for 5 years and spent my money with peace of mind, did you ever think about my pain? Bai Ran, you chose this path yourself. Kneeling down and begging me is useless. I called the security guards. The security guards dragged her up from the ground and escorted her out. She was still hysterically shouting, "Lin Xiao, you bitch. You will die a horrible death." I didn't look back and went straight to the parking lot. The sunlight was dazzling, but I felt incredibly warm. The nightmare that had haunted me for more than 5 years was finally, completely over. After the lawsuit was settled, my life returned to an unprecedented state of peace and focus. I devoted all my energy to my work. With my outstanding professional skills and several highly difficult surgical cases, I was promoted to Associate Director of Cardiothoracic Surgery by the hospital, breaking all the rules. Several research projects I led also made breakthrough progress, and papers were published in top international medical journals, gaining a reputation in the industry. During this time, there was someone who had been quietly by my side. It was my colleague, Jiang Cheng. He was also a cardiothoracic surgeon, a few years older than me, gentle and refined, with excellent professional skills. When I was being cyberbullied the most severely, everyone in the department avoided me, but he was the only one who would put a cup of hot milk on my desk every morning and subtly step forward to help me out when I was besieged by patients' families. He never asked about my past, nor did he ever mention those rights and wrongs. He simply appeared at the right time when I needed him, offering me support and warmth. One day after work, the ginkgo leaves beside the hospital were as yellow as gold. He invited me to see a newly released art film. After the movie, walking down the bustling street, he suddenly stopped and looked at me earnestly. "Lin Xiao," his voice was a little nervous, but his eyes were incredibly sincere. "Can I pursue you?" I was stunned. In the years after the divorce, I never thought about starting another relationship. I looked into his clear eyes, and there was no sympathy, no pity, only pure admiration and love. I didn't agree immediately, but I didn't refuse either. I said, "Let me think about it." In the days that followed, he gave me the answer through his actions. Every day, without fail, he brought me breakfast, accompanied me on rounds, and helped me organize the mountain of medical records. On weekends, he would invite me to hike in the mountains on the outskirts of the city, to see art exhibitions at the art museum, and to attend a concert. He didn't mention the past, only talked about the future. He would talk to me about the latest medical advancements, discuss interesting cases with me, and share a good book he had read. Being with him, I felt the nerves that had been tense for so many years finally start to relax. It turned out that life wasn't just about hatred and calculation, but also about gentle breezes, warm sunshine, and the smiles of the people around you. Half a year later, when he took me home again, I finally nodded. Jiang Cheng was overjoyed, and he carefully gave me an incredibly precious hug. That hug was warm and comforting. A year later, Jiang Cheng and I were in the mall picking out a birthday present for Yang Yang. We ran into Zhou Jingshan. He was more haggard and aged than the last time I saw him, his hair was much whiter, his eyes were hollow, and the cheap jacket he was wearing looked extremely ill-fitting. When he saw Jiang Cheng and I holding hands, smiling happily, he froze in place. Time seemed to stand still at that moment. I just nodded to him lightly, as a greeting, and then took Jiang Cheng's hand and brushed past him. I could feel his burning gaze, full of pain and regret, stuck to my back. Later, I heard from a friend at the mall that he stood there for a long, long time, until Jiang Cheng's and my figures completely disappeared into the crowd.